this is not a new tactic, but it's just kind of the latest in decades-long practices of using Palestinians as human shields. What what does this investigation reveal that we haven't reported on already, or that maybe sheds light on something new?
Well, I mean, what it tells us, and there's the headline for those who are listening. This is from Haaretz, uh, and the headline is Israeli army uses Palestinian civilians to inspect potentially booby-trapped tunnels in Gaza. And I'll just read the first couple of sentences just to give a flavor of uh, and it says, at first, it's hard to recognize them. They're usually wearing Israeli army uniforms. Many of them are in their 20s, and they're always with Israeli soldiers of various ranks. But if you look more closely, you see that most of them are wearing sneakers, not army boots, and their hands are cuffed behind their backs, and their faces are full of fear. The soldiers call each of them a shawish, and it's not an obscure Arabic word, but they say an obscure Arabic word of Turkish origin meaning sergeant. It just means sergeant in Arabic, and from Turkish chavush. Um, Random Palestinians have been used by Israeli army units in the Gaza Strip for one purpose: to serve as human shields for soldiers during operations. Our lives are more important than their lives, soldiers were told. The thinking is that it's better for the Israeli soldiers to remain alive and for the shawishim, using the Hebrew plural, to be the ones blown up by an explosive device. And they're using children as well. I mean, that they've done that. I mean, the thing is, this isn't new. We saw this. They did this with children in the 2014 war. They do it in the West Bank. They actually the Israeli army has something called the neighbor procedure. We've heard of the cannibal directive. We've heard of the pressure cooker procedure. These are all like depraved Israeli army practices that are codified as part of their doctrine. And you have the neighbor procedure, which is where if they're doing a raid in a West Bank village, they kidnap a Palestinian from maybe the house next door and march them at gunpoint to knock on the door or to check on the house, literally using them as human shields. So this isn't new, but what we're seeing is sort of the scale and systematization, and this being um, um, this being done on a mass scale in Gaza that we're not seeing reported at all in U.S. media. And the Haaretz, this is just horrifying, this paragraph from the Haaretz article. They say there is also evidence that in some cases, minors, in other words, children, or the elderly are used. Quote, there were times when really old people were made to go into houses, one combat soldier said. If the Palestinian knows Hebrew, that's an advantage for the IDF. When Gazans are used in buildings and tunnels, they need to report to the force outside. As one soldier put it, Palestinians are told, do one mission of a tunnel shaft and you're free. So just the depravity, the
Unbelievable.
criminality, the cowardice that these so-called soldiers are not willing to go down a tunnel shaft or into a house that they think could be booby trapped, but they're willing to kidnap a child or an elderly person and send them in as a human shield. It is just depraved beyond words, on top of so much depravity from the
Yeah.
rape that we're seeing at Sideteman and other torture camps and concentration camps. Now this. But I just wanted to contrast that with um, if we put up that tweet from the German ambassador in Tel Aviv, uh, which is,
Who finally blocked you this week?
yeah, he did block me. I mean, we won't go into this. Is Stefan Seibert, the German ambassador in Tel Aviv, the longtime spokesperson for Angela Merkel, the previous chancellor of Germany, and also he was himself a TV journalist for years. So he's very self-promoting and very active on social media. But here, this was after the Tabi'in school massacre. and he says terrible scenes around the school compound in Gaza. The IDF makes the case that they targeted Hamas terrorists indeed known to hide in schools. So here he is, like, pretending to express concern about the civilians murdered in this horrifying massacre, but what he's really doing is putting forward a disgusting Israeli lie that Hamas terrorists hide among civilians, when we know that they don't need to hide in schools and hospitals, because they have an underground city that is so dense and so complex that the Israelis haven't been able um, to penetrate it at all, except on the very margins. And we see in the videos that John shows us every week that they're digging tunnels to come up wherever they want to in Gaza, in the middle of the Netzarim corridor, right behind Israeli lines, or launching those missiles that hit Tel Aviv, or the Tel Aviv area yesterday. Those missiles were launched from an area where there were many Israeli armored vehicles,
Yeah.
tanks deployed.
Yeah.
So they move uh, underground, and they can move where they want to. So just to contrast the fact that it's in the Israeli press. It's not
Yeah.
coming from Ali Abu Naim and the Electronic Intifada. It's coming from Haaretz. We use human shields. We use elderly Palestinians as human shields. We use children as human shields. Why? Because their lives don't matter. Our lives are more important. And yet, this disgusting, vile Goyal propaganda from the German government to blame Palestinians from their deaths. And just to be fair to Herr Seibert, it's not just the German government, because we've seen similar talking points from all the European governments, and of course, the king of them all, the United States, and all our politicians, including Democratic Party politicians, to go back to our earlier discussion, who who continue to repeat this trope of human shields, when there's no evidence for it. There's never been evidence for it. It's depraved. Palestinians do not do that. They risk their lives to protect their children and their elderly and their families and their communities. They don't sacrifice them in the way the Israelis do. So I just thought that could not pass without comment.
Yeah, just one quick thing on that. The 2002 Jenin, the attack on Jenin, there was an ambush in what's called the bathtub in the Jenin camp, and it was the neighbor procedure being used on a teenager, and the teenager lured them into an alley, and then he deked off down the alley, and they went to go get him, and bam, they got hit, and 7 of them were killed in an ambush. From a 13-year-old luring them into an alley. But yeah, we've seen this all over. They tie kids on the roof of Jeeps. Like that,
Yeah.
it's the most extraordinary cowardice. Yeah, it's
They just did that to a
Criminality
young
is
man, yeah, a
criminal.
couple weeks ago in Ramallah. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's
and in
disgusting.
700 plus videos that have
Yeah.
been released in this war by the resistance, we've seen 0 civilians. So, and
Yeah.
it's not even like you think that there might be there's just nothing, because the battle space has been cleared out. That's one of the interesting aspects of this war, is that Israel is attempting to evade war crimes trials by telling certain areas to evacuate. And when they tell those areas to evacuate, they're telegraphing where the battle is going to be. And the civilians leave and the fighters go. The
Yeah.
fighters go into that battle space and they fight. And they told us that a long time ago. I remember showing that on this show, like before the new year, the fighters saying like they say we hide behind human shield. There's no people anywhere around here. Our families have moved. Yeah, it's dark. It's just unbelievable cowardice that I hope hangs over the head of these soldiers for the rest of their lives.